Hey, welcome back, Nopi Radio. As promised, we got the man himself in here. He's won more money off punk motherfuckers on the street than anybody. You tell us somebody that's won more money. The man himself, James Finney, Birdman. How you doing this morning?
Doing good, man. How y'all doing?
Oh, man, we're just great to have you.
How are you doing?
Doing great. Doing great.
I feel we are surviving-ish.
Yeah, it's Friday. Mardi Gras, the whole theme today is Mardi Gras. Now I know Birdman's car is red. That's kind of Mardi Gras, but the car that is always on everybody's mind is the Trans Am. And that,
the old hot rod. Everybody loved the old Firebird, and I do too. I still have that car, and people ask me what I'm going to do with it, and I tell everybody they're going to bury me with it. I love that car. I made more money than you can imagine with that car. Won more races than most drag racers ever will in their entire lives.
Yeah, there's so many rumors, and we already know the answer what you're going to say, but we're just going to throw it out there. In an estimated figure off top of your head, how much money do you think you won in that car?
Close to $700,000.
Really?
Wow.
That's an honest opinion. I've heard over 500,000. I've heard 1.2 million, but you heard it from Birdman himself, over 700,000.
Yeah, right around 700, right, maybe over, right at it. It's hard to say because there's a lot of races I couldn't remember. A lot of spots I would chop, win 10,000 and give the runner up 1,000 or 2, that kind of deal.
Yeah, because you are really cool with like, hey, it's raining. Do you want to split the money?
Well, yes and no. You got to remember, I'm an old grudge racer.
Yes, you are.
So, and the money was the prize. The goal to grudge racing is to take as much money off the other guy as possible. It's not a greed thing. It's not because we're money hungry. It's because that's the name of the game. It's the same thing as Bill Gates and the Trumps and everybody who's trying to make the billions of dollars that they could never spend. That is the trophy. So I didn't want to chop. I never wanted to chop pots, but when No Prep started, there was a lot of, I just dominated it. And I knew if I didn't chop the pot, honestly, it'd kill the sport.
Yeah.
They tried to kick me out of a bunch of races, and they weren't going to get me out because people wanted to see me.
Oh, yeah.
They wanted to see the old Firebird. So I knew if I didn't chop the pots that it would kill it. So I did that, and I took one for the team. I rarely benefited from a chop. I was always the one giving it out back in the day.
Well, and I can agree to that, yeah. But I remember one time on the street, and I was trying to remember where it was. It was down south somewhere, because we're in St. Louis. It was down south somewhere. It started sprinkling, and I don't know if you remember this, and it was just too dangerous to go down the road. And I remember you telling somebody, you were like, we can either chop it or we can try to kill each other. And I remember looking over at this race, and I still can't remember where it was, and you shook hands, and that was it. But then, like, a couple weeks later, you guys split the money, but then a couple weeks later, you guys grudge race for a bunch of money. And I can't remember it to save my life, but that was the first time I'd ever seen that. You know what I'm saying?
I don't remember. I remember and Jerry Bird did. We chopped the pot one time because it started raining.
Maybe that's what it was. It was Jerry Bird.
Yeah, but it was starting to rain, so we...
Because it was down south somewhere, and I was trying to remember where it was. But this was back in the day. We're talking over 15 years ago, 10 to 15. This is before a lot of the commercialization and, King of Concrete, No Prep kind of evolved, and it turned into No Prep Kings. And
I don't remember, honestly. Really don't.
Yeah.
Did you grow up like on the racetracks and stuff when you were little? Is that what got you into racing?
No, when I was a kid, I raced motocross. I was a motocross racer.
Oh, no kidding.
When my dad bought me my first car was a 67 Camaro, and it just went from there. Yeah. I mean, 16 years old with a 67 Camaro. Come on, man.
I know. I mean, You're the coolest kid in school, and I bet you were whipping everybody's ass in that car.
No, that car was so slow.
I bet all the ladies loved you, huh?
No. Check it out. That car ran 1592 in the quarter mile. Slow.
Yeah, it was slow.
Put a set of slicks on it, and it slowed it down. It used to spin the tire a little bit and go. But when I put the slicks on it, it slowed it down. It went a 1792. I'm not shit you not.
Oh, wow.
Went 1592 on regular tires, DOT tires, spinning the tire, smoking the tire, and going. 1792 when I put slicks on, and then I turned the nitrous kit on. It went 1292.
Wow.
All the 92s. 1592, 1792, and a 1292.
1292, that nitrous woke it up.
Well, in 1989, 88, that's pretty fast, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. So, when you started off, it was nitrous.
Yeah, nitrous was the thing back then, for sure.
Yeah, taking those small block Chevy motors and stroking them out, and, that was the thing to do back then. So, out of all the cars that you had, and I think this is a dumb question, but the Firebird is still your favorite, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The old 98 Firebird was my favorite. My second car was a 69 Firebird.
Oh.
And that comes a close second to the old Firebird. That car ran back in 92. I ran 1050s in the quarter on the motor, no nitrous or anything. It was a cool car. I love that car.
Yeah, so you've always been an F-body guy.
Oh, yeah, always.
You still have that car?
No, I sold it. I traded it for a 81 Firebird, as a matter of fact.
And that was
400 small block in it. And it was faster. So.
Yeah, and that's the orange one, isn't it?
No, I never had an orange one. No. You're thinking of Gary Weatherly.
Oh, that's right.
A little back history of the whole Birdman thing. Yes, I'm Birdman, but I'm not the original Birdman. Gary Weatherly was my partner.
Yep.
And I used to work on his cars, and he had a car called the One Bad Bird. And everybody couldn't remember that, so they just said the guy that owns that Bird car, and the name Birdman came from one of the fans, and it just stuck with Gary. And that's before we were kind of super famous.
So you worked on that car?
I did all the work on the car. On
Okay.
that orange car. Now, before me, Joe Golden did work on that car.
Yeah, because...
And then he got One Bad Bird 2. And again, me and Joe both went back and forth working on that car. But then Gary and I partnered up, and I started driving for him. So everybody started calling me Birdman because they thought I was Birdman because I was driving Birdman's car. And
that makes sense.
For the longest time, I corrected him. And Gary one day just said, look, we'll just all be Birdman. So here we are. He's the OG Birdman, and I'm Birdman. There you go.
Okay, well, now you understand. Because when I got to know you, that's when you started off with the Firebird.
Yeah.
So, and I'd seen pictures of the third gen Camaro, and I saw some video of it, and I'm like, oh, well, I always assumed that was the car before, but now we all know the story, So that's pretty cool.
There's been a few cars. There's been several cars. The old Birdman thing goes back to 2000.
Yeah, early 2000s.
99, 2000, in that range, yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. Your MPK car, okay, the 69 Camaro, if you put that car on the street, do you think that could beat the Firebird?
Absolutely.
You do think so?
I think 80% of the cars in MPK now could beat that car on the street. The Firebird was a great car in its day, but you got to think about how much technology's come along since then.
Well, that's true too. I get
that all the time. People think that I need to get another Firebird, but let me tell you something. That Firebird would get its ass handed to it.
Yeah, well, that's true too. And at the state of time, with the Firebird on the street, that car was somewhat futuristic compared to what everybody else had. But
Yeah, it was just ahead of its time.
the
Yeah.
one thing is, you guys had the shit figured out with the rear end. You guys had that suspension dialed in that you could walk almost any street and whip everybody's ass.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
plays a big factor into it. So Derek, you got some questions for the Birdman?
Yeah, I've got several. But back to the Firebird. You had a bad crash in that thing in 2020, and you had several serious injuries. Could you tell us about the moments that led up to that crash, what you remember, and the road to recovery and rebuilding?
You know, I'm old, man. Recovery was not easy. It took me over a year to recover, and it shouldn't have, because I didn't have anything. I mean, I had some major stuff, but it wasn't like stuff that it should have taken so long to heal. I had a torn something in my shoulder. I forget what they call it. I keep calling it labia, but I think that's not it. What is that in your shoulder?
It was
I don't remember.
one of the tendons that was stretched and pulled.
Rotary cup?
No, it wasn't a it wasn't a rotator. It wasn't a rotator cuff. No, it was starts with an L. I don't remember. But
Starts with an L.
I don't know what it is. Anyway, that was tore, and a muscle was tore in the shoulder. And I'm telling you, it took about a year for that to heal. I had tore my aorta, and they kept me overnight, and to make sure that it was going to self-heal, and it was showing to self-heal, so they let me out the next day. Collapsed lung, which was just temporary. It just poked it, and it kind of healed itself within a few hours, actually.
Oh wow!
And broke my hand.
Goodness.
Well, when the car got sideways, what was your first initial thought?
Well, I didn't think I was that much out of shape, and it was just me misjudging the road. The road was very sandy.
Yeah.
Wind had been blowing that day 40 miles an hour, and we should have swept it. We should have went down there and checked it. But I mean, I just drove harder than what the road would handle, and I really didn't feel like I was over my head or driving too hard at the time. I was really surprised that it got away from me.
Yeah, it was a very violent wreck, and if any of our listeners, they haven't seen it, which I'm sure they have, look it up online. You know, Birdman's crash, and I remember getting some cell phone footage of it right after it happened, and I was like, holy crap. I mean, it was like a NASCAR, you know, when they fly through the air and they roll real fast. And just the G-force of the roll is insane.
I'll tell you how bad the G-force was. It's funny you talk about this, because it was a pretty awesome. This is the best part of
He's like, it was an awesome wreck.
It was. I mean, I'm going over. It's fixing to go, and I'm seeing the sparks flying off the concrete onto my windshield. I'm like, oh, this is going to be expensive. And then it started to roll, and I said, oh, this is going to hurt. But anyway, so I didn't ever tell anybody this, but for several weeks after that, I had bad vertigo. I'd go to get up and I'd fall down. And I just knew I had screwed my brain up. I just knew I did. Chris Hamilton Lucid called and asked me to drive his car, and I said, no, I can't. I'm not healed. And again, I didn't tell him at that time that I really think I got brain damage going on here. So finally I told my doctor, I said, okay, we got to address this. My brain's messed up. He said, okay, what happened? And I showed him a picture of the wreck, and he just started laughing. He said, you broke the crystals loose in your ear, and it's got your equilibrium all screwed up. And he showed me this little maneuver, turn my head this way, and that way, and I didn't have any more falling down episodes. Funny shit, because I just knew I was going to die. I just knew it was brain damage, but
yeah, messing up your equilibrium in your ears, that's a serious thing. And when you don't know and the doctors tell you you're good to go,
yeah,
you know, And
That's relief.
Yeah.
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 Well, you guys heard it first here on Nopi Radio. But it happens, and it's like we were all, and I know this was some time back. It was in 2020, but we were praying for you. We're like, holy crap! And then Megatron wrecked. I don't remember if Megatron was first or it was you, but it's just
He was 2 passes after me.
Yeah, that's right.
A pass in between us. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a very similar wreck, and so
Very simple.
and when you watch the video, let's go into the TV show. When you watch the clips going, this season, this, and this, and it's like, holy crap! I mean, when Justin wrecked his car, that was a big deal because that had never, that was a pure coincidental accident. And I mean, he got seriously hurt. And then, like,
Right.
2 seasons later, you see this, and it's not just one car; it's multiple cars. It's like we've always told people, and people say, "Oh, that's Street Outlaws, man. It's Mickey Mouse and it's fake." You can't fake those races.
Mm-mm.
No, there's nothing fake about that stuff.
And it's like, it's whoever gets to the stripe first wins. And then the shit talking, I don't really think it's ad-libbed. I mean, there is some people from that show that legitimately don't like each other. But,
For sure.
it's part of a job, But yeah, So how mangled is the chassis? I mean, is it savable?
Well, every body panel on it came off. It's a bare chassis.
Yeah, but I mean,
That happened during the wreck. I didn't take any of it off. The
No.
doors are gone. The roof, the trunk, the quarter panels, everything's gone. It's
But-
in a ditch somewhere in
Nebraska
Wyoming.
or Wyoming. Yeah.
It's Wyoming.
Wyoming. No, I mean the chassis. I mean, we know the front half's gone, the back half is messed up. The only thing that really survived is where you were sitting, right?
No, I mean, that car could actually be rebuilt. It could be, but it would cost so much. You'd have to front half it and back half it.
Yeah.
And I thought about doing that, but then I've still got a 104-inch wheelbase car. It's a short wheelbase car, which is, I'm not blaming that on the wreck, but it's definitely a contributing factor. A short car like that is hard to drive.
Yeah.
When the ass end comes around on you, it's coming. Longer cars are safer.
Yeah, that's true too. What questions you got, Shaylin?
Well, one with the extent of the injuries that you had in the crash. I mean, did you have any safety equipment failure, or what contributed to the
Now,
injuries
what
inside of the car?
contributed to my injuries 100%, except for the broken hand. Now, people said, what came through your door and broke your hand? I said, my door came to my door and broke my hand. Other than that, I would have walked away from it if my seatbelts had been tight enough. They were as tight as I could get them. They were really hard to get to readjust. Kind of hard to explain, but the seat needed to come up and out to get to the damn thing so I could tighten the bolts, and we just kept putting it off. And they were tight, but they weren't snug.
They
they
could
don't
have been
hurt you
tighter.
when you put them on. If they don't hurt you when you put them on, you're gonna bounce around in there, and that's what tore everything up. They call it seatbelt injuries.
Yeah.
Everything that hurt me was seatbelt injuries. My shoulder, the heart, the lungs, all that.
Well, I mean, we're glad you made it through it, and then, you surprised the world by bringing out the Camaro. And they're like, he's back.
Yeah.
He ain't done.
No, I don't think I could quit racing. And I'm hoping that they do a little more for the turbo cars for MPK. If we do end up doing another MPK, I really hope they'll give us a break with the turbo cars. There were 5 turbo cars, and only one of us was not in Racer Weigh-In at the end of the season, and that was Lutz, and he would lose every first round almost every time.
Yeah.
So the the blower cars, nitrous cars, they just have a big advantage over us with the Zoomies.
Yeah, and
And-
they're holding the cars down to the ground with those Zoomies.
They are, and they're trying to base these rules on, prep track racing, which is a good place to start for rules. But what you got to understand is it's the same reason a turbo car can never 60 foot and go to the 330 as fast as a blower or a nitrous car with Zoomies, just because of the laws of physics.
Yeah.
But they're close on a prep track. Because you get on a bad surface, and I'll just be honest, a turbo car these days is a poor option for street racing and no prep racing. I know that sounds terrible, and people don't want to hear that. That is a fact.
Yeah.
So they've got to come off of that they've got to come off the weights or something for the turbo cars. I've tried to get them to give us a bigger tire, and
Yeah, they're pretty stuck
Oh, wait.
on the 34-inch tire right now.
yeah, I think if they gave the turbo cars a 36, it would even the playing field, and we'd be more competitive. And
That's
these guys,
Good idea.
a lot of the turbo cars would, like in season 3, 4, and 5, they would just go down the racetrack and they would run a 10th slower than everyone. But if they went down the track every time, I think Mike ended up 12th in points.
Mm-hmm.
Not too bad, but I'm just not built that way. I'm going to go and I'm going to win. I don't care if it's 12th or 2nd or 32nd. It's all a losing position. And maybe that's not a good way to be. Maybe I shouldn't look at things that way, but that's just how I'm built.
Yeah.
So, to the fans that watch
Second place
it, that
is
want
the
it,
first loser.
is the first loser, and everybody after that is just more losers. Bottom
Yeah.
line.
Well, let me ask you this question real quick before we go to the commercial break.
Mhm.
And we had Scott Taylor on the show this week, and Tony McKinney with Novocaine. How did you feel about the MPK draft, the way they did it, like the football, and there was no Team Texas, no NOLA, no 405. How did you feel with that?
I really didn't care. It was something different. A lot of people said it was dumb, and
Yeah, they said it was
They
dumb
got
as
all
shit.
they got all in their feels about it. But the thing is, these guys, I don't even look at it that way anymore. Yeah, it's dumb shit, but you got to make TV. You got to do something other than just drag racing, because drag racing alone is not enough to entertain the average Joe unless they're a motorsports fan. So to entertain the whole country, the whole world, to make it one of the best shows on TV to ever have been on TV, you have to entertain the masses.
And you have to try new things.
That's right.
And
So I'm not against it, believe it or not. I mean, it's what's
well, and
what let me be a professional racer for the past 10 years.
yeah, well, and
So,
it's like I
I'm
told
not
people.
mad.
It's like I told people, there will always be Team Texas. There will always be the 405. There will always be NOLA. But
Mhm.
with this is something that the fans can interact with. But how do I say this? It might not have made sense if you were at the track. But when they edit it, I think that it's going to be fun, because some of the fuckery and the shit that they did was like, well, hey, I want you off the team. I'm going to trade a golf cart. Well, what was it? The one was a golf cart and $5,000 to somebody else and get them on my team. And I hope the way that it's presented after editing and it comes on TV, it'll be fun. You know? So, I mean, they got to do new stuff. I mean,
You have to. And the race fan doesn't like it. The race fan doesn't like all this other trickery and BS. I'm a race fan. I would like to see the times on the board, because this is basically class racing.
mm-hmm.
There's no grudge in it anymore. Nobody grudge races anymore. It's class racing. It's professional racing. So go ahead and put the times on the board. But if you do that, it hurts your whole image of what we have on TV.
Well, the MPK cars are so close right now.
Mhm.
Why not show the times? You're right. I mean, why not? I mean, if you were doing King of Concrete stuff, running the track backwards where the clock can't clock you, then I get that. But
Right.
That's not our deal with MPK. I mean, we have our own deal. But hey, we got to go to these commercial breaks. We're going to be right back in just a few minutes with the man himself, James Finley, aka Birdman. We're going to be asking him some interesting questions about Valentine's Day and what he's doing for Mardi Gras. We'll be right back. Nopi Radio.